Hello and welcome back to the Wayfarer podcast, episode 13. It's a lucky one. We're here with the whole cast. We got
Jonathan,
Katya,
Zach,
Riley,
and Jared. Happy everyone is back. Man, we've been on a journey heading into the summer. How's everybody feeling? Are we feeling good?
feeling
I'm excited.
pumped.
Yeah, I love it.
we've come a long way.
Come a long way.
I don't know.
Last
The rain recently. Sorry, the rain recently has been getting me in naps. Like I just want to take a nap all the time. Sorry, I had something in my throat.
Oh, that was...
was not meant to talk there. Katya, go.
It's great.
We're on
I
a
thought
little...
you were choking.
No, I thought I was too.
I thought you were choking up, just like the rain. It's been...
Yeah. I went to the pool yesterday and I got a basketball hoop for the pool that floats, and my friends and I decided to play basketball, and I kid you not, I think we were like drowning each other and while playing. Like we would just like try to block and just like end up like shoving you down underwater. So I think I have a little water like stuck in my throat still from possibly drowning last night.
That's a thing.
But it was fun. It was a
Riley,
blast.
a pool toy you need to get is they have inflatable like floaties that you can steer with controls on the floaty.
No.
You should get that.
I can just imagine like putting that on it and like watching somebody try to like shoot and just like moving it.
No, I'm not even. No. You're on the floaty.
Oh, you're on it.
You're on it, and like you can move. It's like a little boat on a floaty.
It's got a motor.
It has a motor.
It sounds
Maybe
like a
not a
hazard.
motor, but it's like it
How
lets
else
out
would it
air,
work?
so you move forward.
It's a jet boat.
Good luck.
It's like a tube, but you can go forward. I want one for the the lake, and you can just imagine me like with a little like, you know.
So you get
Oh,
eaten
you
by a
like
gator.
hold on to. I know what you're talking about.
Do you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
Yeah. You like hold on to it, and it's like a
No,
it's like
no.
an underwater thing.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
No, different.
Well, put a
Half of
picture
us
up.
are
This is
still
new
back
technology.
here going, you're not putting an inflatable anything in the lake and just float. No paddle will get you fast enough away from an alligator. It's just like too.
Yeah, we live in Florida. You're not doing that.
I'll
in
show you
lakes.
guys after the episode. It's really
Okay.
cool. But
Wow. Well, that was a big turn at the start of the episode. I did not realize we were going to take, but inflatable pool toys.
You ask about summer.
Summertime,
You find
baby.
What are
you
you gonna
find
get?
everything here at the Wayfarer podcast.
Side Quest Summit, right?
Side Quest Summer.
what's
there
a
you
side
go.
quest you've done recently, Jared?
I ran a half marathon.
Nice.
Went
Anything else?
deep sea
Anything
fishing. That
permanent?
was pretty fun.
Anything permanent?
The memories I've made will have a permanent mark on my life.
You hope.
Yeah, I hope so. I got a tattoo.
Oh.
Let's see it. Let's see it.
Yes, there we
Ooh.
go.
There it
allowed?
is.
Yeah.
That's
Had to
that's
get that out of the way.
Yeah,
It looks good.
That was as bad as I thought that was. gonna be.
Fantastic artist, though.
Yeah,
You did a
shout
really
out
good job.
Josh
How do you say it?
I'm not even going to attempt to say
Nadia?
it.
Nadeau.
Nadeau.
Yeah.
I think
Nadeau.
Nadeau.
Yeah,
Nadeau.
like Trudeau, only Nadeau.
Yeah.
There you go.
Brr,
We got
man,
it. That was just for you, Josh.
Josh. Thanks a lot. I don't think he listens to the Wayfarer podcast, but we love him.
He might.
We love him. We
You
have his
never
art right there. Josh, text me if you hear this. Probably won't text me. Anyway, wow. Episode 13. What a journey we've been on. Riley loved that one. This is our season finale, guys. End of season 1. Whoa.
I can't believe it. I decided to wear a hat for the last episode. I know for a fact I'm going to look back at this and be like, girl, why did we wear a hat for the last episode?
Girl, why did we wear a hat?
Do you never do that? Look at like old photos. You're like, did no one tell me not to do that?
I'm like, girl, what were we thinking?
I can't wait for episode 1 to season 2 to you to say that, and I'm just gonna like go backwards like you're watching TV to you saying that.
Flashback.
Oh, please.
Flashback.
I know I'm going to regret this decision.
Oh, man.
It's okay.
I think the hat looks good.
I think that's great.
Aw,
It's
thanks,
summertime.
guys.
Summer
It is
vibes.
summertime.
It's good.
Well, the journey we went on in season 1 was a crazy one. You know, we were really trying to do something unique, kind of reclaim, an old way of thinking about the Christian walk in life, and a lot of the different language that we were learning over the last couple of months. It's been fun, but like hard. I think it's an interesting thing to especially I think, most of us kind of have a Christian upbringing. So we've had a framework of thinking through all of these ideas and, trying to, I think, implement that in our life and like live an embodied life of love and everything has been unique, especially with our most recent conversation talking about celebrating the good, participating, in the broken, and then, hoping for the future. And it's been fun to get to kind of, the whole season kind of leading to this conversation that we're having all about love that I teased on the last episode. For you guys, as we were thinking through these ideas, like what has been, kind of the good of this journey of thinking through this whole season, especially kind of to the crescendo that we're in right now. What's been good? What's been kind of the fruit and the fun of this journey?
That's a great question. I
Thanks.
feel like
Appreciate
it's definitely been challenging trying to digest such massive concepts for sure, and then applying it. But then once I do apply it, I find myself looking for the positive in my day. So like even this past week was particularly draining, but if someone asked me like how my day was going, I'd be like, I'm just so happy to be alive and be here. And like I could have been like, I'm exhausted and like just trauma dumped on this poor customer, but like I find myself looking at the positive instead of honing in on the negative, and like at the same time not ignoring the negative, but being a little bit more proactive in practicing how are we going to handle this instead of just leading with light instead of leading with darkness.
I hope you're saying it in a good way, though. If you're like, I'm just so happy to be alive.
I don't think I talk like that
No.
particularly. I think my voice is a little bit too high pitched to sound.
I'm just so happy.
I agree. I think that the challenge is you have to hear it so many times and spend so much time in it to understand these concepts and ideas. And that's what I've really enjoyed about this is we're talking about it and it's constant. And so when I'm going throughout my life, it comes to mind and I'm talking to someone and I'm like, wait, no, I need to seek their highest good. And it crosses my mind just because we're in it. And I think you got to stay in it.
Completely. Oh my gosh, that's so true. I feel like sometimes I'll go on ranting sessions. Maybe you guys have seen it, maybe you haven't. And I'm just like ranting about someone in the sense of like what just happened or a bad circumstance. And then like later I'll be like, oh God, I should just pray for that person instead of just sitting and tearing them up. I don't do it often, but when I do.
When I do, yeah.
Not too many arch nemesis in your world right now.
I think what's been helpful too is just you use the word reclaim, recover, like the idea that we're on a journey and that's part of the just taking a breath and saying that the Christian life is an invitation to follow Jesus, and it's going to take our whole life, and we don't need to have it figured out as we start. If we succeeded in season 1 of saying, hey, there's a way of being in the world and there's an invitation to follow Jesus, who is the example of embodied love, and you don't have to have it all figured out. The invitation is to follow him, and as we follow in that way, something happens to us and we transform little by little. And so there's this great scripture that says, don't despise the day of humble beginnings. Like don't worry about that. Start small. I don't have it all figured out. But what I do have is a desire to follow and to live in that way. And there's something that's caught my attention. I hope that's happened in season 1 for everybody who's listening, who's saying there's a way of being, and there's a certainty in a way of being, but I don't have to be certain of all the things. I can start walking in the direction of my hope. And that's the journey. Is I hope someday that my life exemplifies this mature embodied love. I hope that becomes my story, but I'm going to start walking in that direction and learn along the way. I hope I think that's what's been fun. And you're not alone.
Yeah. I think that's been my favorite part, like, is that we're getting to do it together. And like, even though there's plenty of times still where I feel like I'll like go back to the cave kind of and be like, why would I talk about this anyway? Nobody wants to hear about that. And I'll be like, no, this is the whole point of this walk. It's like, I'm not alone doing this. I'm doing this with you guys. We're on this walk together and this journey together. And I think that's been my favorite part of learning this way of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun, and I think that's the goodness of it, is like hearing how this tangibly impacts us on the walk, because the last thing we want to do on here is just talk about fun ideas and idealistic realities, but it's like the real on the ground is kind of the beauty of like the texture of our lives and what we're doing. And so we talked about the good. Let's talk about the heart. Like we kind of touched on it a little bit, but like what has been the heart of the journey of like trying to whether it be kind of a conversation we've had in the past or specifically around celebrating the good, being with the broken and looking towards the future.
Yeah, completely. I think I kind of tapped on it, but I think the main thing for me was just like trying to understand these very like beautiful but in-depth like things that we would throw out. Or even like when Zach would like say certain new words I wasn't familiar with, it was like I kind of had to take a second to meditate on it and digest it instead of just letting it kind of pass and cruise by. So I think that was probably my biggest thing. And also just staying on that like track of like reminding myself to like, go back and nurture and then also remember noticing and then embrace. It's like having to remind myself the certain steps was kind of hard because it's so easy to just like fall off the bandwagon and like sit in your like sorrow, I guess that's the word I'm thinking of. But yeah, but back to digesting what we kind of threw down throughout the season, that's when I would find myself getting back on and realizing, okay, it's just a moment. This isn't my entire journey. It's okay to not be okay, but we're going to go back on this path that we're all walking on together.
Mm-hmm. My first book recommendation, if you're also like Katya and struggled with some of the words that Zach has said, the dictionary, Merriam-Webster's. Click.
Go.
Boom. First one.
Was that
know what
actually your book reference?
Yeah, just the dictionary.
He gets the gong for that.
Boom.
Here's the thing.
That's so mean.
No,
I
I'm
had a
gonna
tomato. I'd throw it.
I'm
but
sorry.
no, don't. Here's the thing. When you said that, I was so
Being so serious.
I was so proud of you for saying it. And it's awesome that you did, because here's the thing, and we can't take this lightly. And the book recommendation to have a dictionary, I'm going to pull these two threads together really quickly, because when you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, part of the work to be done, I think I read somewhere that a speechwriter writes a speech for a 6th grade level, and that was like 7 years ago. And we just have to be honest about that. And it's not something to beat ourselves up about. And there is an opportunity for us to say every podcast doesn't have to just be immediate, instantaneous feedback to make us laugh. There could be a conversation where a word is thrown out like transcendence. This is, you are made for something, that there's a deep longing in you, like Lewis said, that said, if I can't find satisfaction for that thing in me, the only possible explanation is I was made for something beyond, transcendent. And once I have language for that, now my story widens out. But I didn't know how to talk about that. But now I have that word transcendence. And we say, what is it that this life of God resides in us? Well, that's an incarnational reality. Something's birthed in me. I didn't have language or reference for that. So I'm proud of you for saying, hey, slow down. What is that word? Why do we use that word? Why do we connect that? So well done. And one of my friends, we just had him on Lab the podcast. He's the head of a great books program at a great liberal arts school out in Oregon. He tells a fantastic story of his grandmother, who I don't think that she went to high school or completed high school, but she was committed to reading and she loved reading. And he tells the story that she had a book in one hand and she would have a dictionary in the other, and she would read and she would go to her dictionary, and she would read and she would go to her dictionary, and she with just a labor of love educated herself and built this vocabulary. And so a dictionary is a beautiful reference. He has that dictionary in his office, and he stewards a great books program. And he said, never underestimate the power of having a dictionary, because too many of us just cruise right by. Like you said, a word goes by and we go, I don't know what that means. And I'm not going to take the 2 seconds to dig into it. So well done, you. Well done, you. See that?
Thank you. I was all for it. It was a positive.
I really thought you were kidding at first.
No, it's a fantastic
It was a
book.
little tongue in cheek, but I also am with you that a lot of the words sometimes are, I'm like, I need you to explain this.
It
We
makes
all do.
complete sense. The amount of times I search up on Google blah 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 definition is more so than I think.
Good job.
Thank you, Zach.
Good job. Everybody, good job.
Makes me think of Kevin from The Office.
Why?
I do more word when less word be
Yeah.
trick.
Many small time make big time.
And what are you going to do with all this time?
See world.
Kevin, you can't possibly save enough time to see the world.
Kevin, are you saying see the world or sea world?
See world. Oceans, fish, jump.
Okay.
China.
No, see? Right there.
Save
That's the
money,
problem with your
sea
method, because I
world.
still don't know if you're saying sea world or see the world.
The two struggles I face when I'm trying to love well is, well, the first one is my own discipline. So I find if I am not being disciplined and I'm with other people, I find myself like reflecting and thinking, man, there's all these things I should be doing, and I'm more concerned with getting myself up to a certain level of standards. And there's the phrase, a well-ordered garden produces fruit. So I find when I'm doing well for myself, I'm more present with people and can love them. And the other one is pride. And that one, because I was trying to think, if I'm not loving well, what am I doing? And the opposite of love is hate. But I'm not going around just hating people if I'm not loving them well. I find the opposite of loving people well is pride and thinking about myself. And this comes up from like silly things, like my brother-in-law, he's starting a business and he's done great, and gut reaction is, oh man, like they're gonna be rich and I gotta catch up to them, like it's a competition. But it's like, wait, no, like you're doing great, that like I'm proud of you, I'm happy for you, like take off and go, like that's good for you. So it's the thinking less about myself and thinking more about the other person.
Yeah, that's such a hard one. I think especially like the comparison and the, you know, the constant, like when my life and my headspace is so much about me, like if my day is just so focused on what I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to be like fulfilling Jared, it's like those are some of the most miserable days of my life. Like even if I like nail it from a schedule perspective and are disciplined, it's like I still get to end the day and I'm like, you know, like I thought this was going to fulfill me.
I think that's one of the things we talk about, nurturing a life of love in us, that gets me the most excitement for me when I think about moving from infancy to maturity in love. And again, this doesn't happen quickly. It's the long course of our life. So it's exciting to think, I don't need to make this true. I need to nurture a life of love in me, and it becomes true. But to get to the point where more and more, when I hear of your success, that I'm stoked about it. To live like that, if you could bottle up the feeling of what it feels like to go through my day without that competitive energy that wants to tear you down or get ahead, or like if we were honest about how much of that is in us and how much of our life we're comparing and kind of like jockeying for position. And if we could just think, what would it be like to lift that and have that go away, and not just go away, but to literally, truly be sitting at a table and hear our brother-in-law say like, hey, my company just did really well. And our actual pure first thought is, good for you. That's awesome. Like the embodied experience of that. I think that's what's so cool to think about, both sides of that. There's something good that happens when we're loving like that, is their good happens. They're impacted when they see our affect change and us before them, and we're better for it, right? Like we actually get a net gain in the really qualitative part of life.
And I find one of the like very subtle ways that I can find myself like where I'm thinking in like the current mindset is, if someone's telling a story, do I ask a follow-up question about their story, or do I immediately start telling like my own story about like something related? And the more that I'm like trying to jump in with my own story and be funny or be interesting or whatever it is, it's like the less interesting I am to that person. And like the less like I'm not even showing them love, you know, to be like, oh, tell me more about this, or tell me more details, or da da da. And it's like to love someone well is really, it's like the outpouring of that is being interested in them and asking them questions. And it's like those are always like better interactions to begin with, that when you're more interested in them than you are in yourself.
Yeah.
But I find myself often being wanting to be like, me. Or like Brian Regan has a joke where he's like the me monster, you know, at parties who just want to talk about themselves.
I mean, coming from a family of 8 that competitive nature has always been there. And recently, like getting older, we're kind of encountering the same experiences of like job and income and like success and like leadership, like those kinds of competitive things that it's like each sibling wants to be on the same playing field, but like what if one does better than the other, or what if one is looked up to more than the other in society? It's like there's this weird nature that just rises naturally. But my mom was like, a win for one of us is a win for all of us. So it's like you have to remember that, because if you're competing against each other, and this isn't even just family, like in general, then like separation happens. But if we're rooting for each other, it like all collides, and it's like at the end of the day we're all working towards the same common goal. And so that's just big family teachings, I guess.
What's so amazing about that, thinking about in the context of the Christian story, there's this idea that if there is no brotherhood of man without the fatherhood of God. And that idea is so massive, because you start to realize, right, come up out of the cave, you are God, we are not. If that's the confession, then all of us are made in the image of God. And if there's truly one God who is over all and in all and through all, right? Like this, all these scriptures start to come back to the forefront, and you start to understand, like, this is what Paul was driving at in Ephesians, that he's created out of the two one new man out of two, and destroyed the dividing wall of hostility. And so there's neither Greek or Jew or slave or free. We're all one big family, and a win for you is a win for you is a win for you. And I think that's that mark of love that we're talking about. Like, they will know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. It was radical to be around. It's radical today to be around a family of 8 who really does say, hey, a win for you is a win for us. It's a win for you. Like, we are one family. And that's a beautiful vision. It's a hopeful vision, but it can feel like it's way in the distance. That's why we say love is to participate in the future, to believe that we're going to live in a way today when it doesn't feel like we're just one happy family and a win for you is a win for you. It doesn't necessarily feel like that right now, but I'm called to put myself in that posture. And so I think your mom is very right. She's touching something deeply true, not just about your family, but the human family. And that's the invitation. It's awesome.
I found the most practical way to get myself in that place is in my free time and my quiet time to pray for them and to pray for their success or their struggles that they're going through. And then when you're with them in person, like, those things are at the top of your mind because you spent time thinking about them. And it just works if you do it.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think you can pray for people you don't love, right? And you can't love people you don't pray for, right? Or you pray for. Like, if I pray for you, I'm going to end up loving you. That just, it follows.
Commingled.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest part for me in the journey has been kind of recently that part of the future and participating in it. And I don't really even, I've been thinking about it today, like the idea of participating in the future and what that looks like. I think what the idea I've made in my head, at least, of the future, it's like I have a hard time trusting the future. And it's like so many times I feel like I want to take a hold of the future and like make it now, and instead of letting the future have its pace. And like an example, like I want to be in a relationship right now. Like, I want to have that summer time where I get to go on dates, or like I want to like have all of my friends like together all the time, and like I want all of these things. And it's like I think about the future and I start to get worried, like, well, what if all my friends move away and I don't have any friends left? Or what if I never do find, the perfect one for me, or the person that I'm gonna fall for and fall for me. And so I start to like, well, how can I make this happen now? And so I'm like, all right, let's get everybody together, let's start going on dating apps, or start meeting new people, like trying to just like rush into it all and try to take a hold of the future into my own hands, instead of just trusting that God's got it, the future, like let me just do my part and participate into it instead of trying to take a hold of the future. But as I've been thinking about like the future and participating in it. What does it look like to participate in the future is kind of the thought running through my head. And I mean, anybody can answer that, but I'm interested to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I would just say like what you're struggling with like resonates a lot. Like I think it's difficult, especially like in the journey. It's like we've experienced like hard things happen, along the way, and so you're like hope for the future. It's like even Ted Lasso like had a line where it's like it's the hope that kills you, and because it's like you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you hope. And I think that's where in framing this, it's like what we're hoping for in the future is not potentially that wife or that the job or this promotion, things that could or could not happen in the future, but like a greater future that is coming to. And so I think that's like a key thing in this is when we're thinking about the future and the hope in that it's not necessarily this immediate thing, but like a further off thing.
Yeah, I agree. To validate your point, I swear, I think I said the same exact thing you just said, probably like 5 episodes ago. Like, I remember saying it, and it's so hard to say. Like, I remember when I said it, it's like I had an apple in my throat because it's such a vulnerable thing to say, but it's so relatable. It's like, it's all in the mindset where I've definitely been at points in my life where I'm like, there is no hope that I'm going to find what I've always hoped and dreamt for. And then like little like devils or demons come into your mind and they're like, yeah, like you need to face the reality. And it's like the reality is not Disney and it's not all magical and it's not all blah, 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 blah. But it's like there is a promise that God has placed in your heart and in like the Bible and everywhere that you will be fulfilled. And you don't know how that's going to look, but you will be fulfilled. And it's like just holding on to that is enough for me. And it's like in the sense of relationships, it's like days that are good, but days that are bad, and just holding on to that hope of fulfillment. And you'll know when you know, because I mean, that's what every single story I've ever heard has said. But in the sense of participating in the now, I'm a big believer in just connectedness. Like I love connection. And so whenever I'm feeling down and about or alone, I'm like the first person to go on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, like look for clubs. I'm like a big club person where the other day, Jared and I and my sister went to a run club in Tampa and I made like 5 friends. It was like the best. And then like at the coffee shop, I'll make like 5 more friends. And it's like, I love connecting with people because it's like you get to learn their story. You're expanding your network, and then through them, they introduce you to other people, and you just have such a brighter. It's like you're leaving your small room in your brain that's saying you have no hope for tomorrow, and you're not going to get what you want, and you're entering into the reality of all the hope around you. Like I love it. So that's how I participate in my.
It's cool to hear you say like connection is a participation in the future. And I think that's right. There's a deep reality in that. And that's what's important to remember. And it goes to your point of like, what are we imagining on the horizon? Like when we say participate in the future, what do we define the future as? What is that future that we're hoping for? If it's a house and a dog and this type of dog in this city, then we might be disappointed. It might be delayed. It might be smaller. That imaginative vision might be smaller. So we have to be honest, like, and I love that you said, like, sometimes I'm like, well, that's not reality. And right there we go, actually, what we're saying is that is reality. Reality is a participation in an ever continual union of love. That is reality. And the future is without fear, without separation, without division, embodied participation in that loving relationship that's continual. That's what the future is, right? It's an embodied experience of love, willing the good of the other and the other willing my good. And everyone's good is being willed together. And it's a participation in a life where every life is receiving and giving that type of love. That's the ultimate future, is to share in that divine life of God, of who he is, that nature. That's what the future holds for us. Once we have that big vision, we're like, oh, that's where I'm heading? I don't know exactly what that's going to entail in my 30s, in my 40s, in my 50s, but to participate in the future means to bring my life into an alignment with that is the ultimate aim. And so connection today is building the way I'm going to finish. It's to widen out. That's what love wants to do. It wants to carry me out and say, hey, let me pay attention to your story and widen out. Now, does that mean I'm going to marry the person I'm talking to? Not necessarily, but the capacity to love you well is putting you in a position to participate in the future. And so as sure as, like, if my hope and desire is for marriage or for relationship or for kids or for whatever it is that you want to hope for in the future, you get great at loving right now. That's what's building towards the way that you want to finish. And so you told that story of inviting your friends over for the first day of hospitality around the pool, right? We bought a basketball hoop. I invited friends, and you said the words, it was my first opportunity to be hospitable. I think, wow, well, what was I doing if I didn't have them? Well, I'm putting myself in a position to be hospitable. I'm well ordering my apartment. I'm taking care of ordering my garden so that it can produce something. There's always these little things that we can participate in the future, but we have to have the right definition of what the future holds. And it is love and connection, this ever widening invitation to love and will the good of the other. That's where we're headed. And once that's the case, then we go, okay, well, let me get really good at that today. And I hear you that there's a tension that says, well, I want to know the person that's going to be the aim and end of my love. But I think there's something really cool about going, I can get good at loving even as I wait for that.
It's beautiful.
It's tough. I think, Jonathan, it's kind of almost like the same practice you were talking about of like the discipline. Like it's so easy for me, I feel like, to just like, well, I want these things now, so I'm going to take it into my own hands. And it's like, no, it's like you have to be disciplined to let mature love run its course. Like it runs at its own pace. Like I could try to take control of it and, try and go meet somebody tonight and, be like, oh, they're the one, I'm going to get married to them. Stop. Threw me off.
It's a great question, though. Am I ready for it if I have to have it now? Right? Am I actually ready for it if there's that impulsiveness in me or that insatiable part of me that has to have it now? Or is the story actually getting me to the point where I'm so comfortable and at rest at the table that when the waiter puts my meal down, I'm delighted that it's there. I'm not like, where's
Scarfing
dinner?
it down.
Right? Yeah. Like, so I think there's something there, right? There's a fine tuning part.
Completely.
Yeah, you can almost want it when you're wanting certain things so bad in the future. It's like you're really, getting off kilter of what Vision Up is, in the process. And, yeah, I think that can really mess with, how you're living on the day to day within that. So when we're thinking about kind of participating in the future and trying to, look at on like the tangible of like, what does it even look like to like take care of our gardens or to, try to, in every little environment that we're in, try to elevate it, try to be, impactful and living out this lifestyle in a way that is meaningful.
How would you say you do that?
Oh, Uno reverse card.
Look at that.
What happened?
You
Did I do
just
something?
flipped it. You
Oh.
reversed
Did
it.
the
I
Uno
asked the
reverse-
question and you said it.
That was
You're like,
well
no,
done.
you.
That was awesome.
No, you.
Getting everyone open up tonight.
Yeah.
Last episode, everything's going on the table right now.
Let's go.
Episode 13, Secret Spill. Yeah, I think it's just a little ways. Like especially in the corporate environment, I feel like it's very easy for it to get like everyone to be kind of drones or just like very exhausted in it. And so I have this like weird part of my personality. There's multiple, but this one particular, when people are like tired, that kind of just gets me jazzed up. Like when we went to Chicago on that vision trip, it was like 4 a.m. Like everybody's showing up, like just having a cup of coffee. And I'm like, well, good morning, everybody. Like, how are we doing? It's so good to see
You're
you.
that guy.
Yeah, and like,
I was gonna say I
That
can
was
think of
a-
a time where you were that guy with Jonathan and I a few weeks ago.
yeah, I know. I was like, well, good morning, guys. How are we doing? And you're like, hey, we're not going to talk for 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. That's my fault. So, and I like 2 hours later on the 4 a.m., I was like 6 a.m. and I was like dying, like on the plane, like just trying to sleep. But whatever it was, like being around people, it's like where like the morale is down. I like my instinct is to be just like very energetic, not always positive. Sometimes I'm making jokes about the terrible situation we're in, but there's a enthusiasm that I just get in those kind of circumstances. And so specifically in the corporate world, I kind of got this compliment recently that they are like, and whether this is good or bad, I took it as a compliment. They were like, there's before Jared meetings and now there's after Jared meetings. And they're like, they're more fun and they're more energetic and everybody's like looser. And it's like very funny because there's like 30 people on these calls sometimes. And it's like to think that they're like, yeah, like Jared's the cause of that. You're just like, oh, I mean, I don't think it's all me, like it's a whole thing. But I think in like very small ways, like coming up, being yourself, being enthusiastic, just for the sake of being enthusiastic, not any kind of thing, is contagious is the word. So it's been fun, and people are way funnier than me on these calls. But I think I kind of first domino.
Well, I mean, think about this. The enthusiasm is the most contagious thing that's been said. And I think it's true. There's something about that contagious thing. And a Christian vision of work. This is like work is something, right, that we dread or we avoid or we escape or we go, hey, I'm here until I don't have to be here. And when you show up to work, is like, no, there's an opportunity for us to be who we were made to be as humans. We're made to work. We're made to participate and to build things and do things. And there's a joy in that. That catalytic energy is bringing an embodied vision of the Christian imagination of the world. It's not a total work culture just for the sake of trying to survive. There's a different why behind our work. And when you embody that, it impacts the whole culture. It's good.
Yeah, it's funny. I tell the Tampa coworkers, shout out Brandy and Winston if you're listening, but I'll be like, oh, I love you guys. I love hanging out with you guys. And they're like, shut up, Jared. Like, it's 8:30 in the morning. We do not need this kind of enthusiasm. But I mean it. Like, I don't know. It's just fun. I love people. So
That's good.
I think it's a small way.
No, totally. Quoting my friend Lauren in her college essay, she said, laughter is contagious, so why not be the virus? And I feel like that's genuinely like you. Like,
You're
I
a
remember
virus.
that, like,
I'm a virus.
You're a
That's,
virus.
that's
I
what
remember
we're
that
saying.
Chicago experience. That was like probably like still the first encounters of Jared that I was having. And I remember being on that tram at 4 a.m. looking at this guy in the corner. I was like, who's ready to go to the plane? And everyone was like exhausted. I was like, oh my God.
Stay clear of that.
I'm like, we're going to Chicago, guys.
How can you not be excited? Yeah,
It was very
It was
exciting.
early. It was very
It was
early,
early.
though.
My
Yeah.
favorite was around 7:30 a.m. when we got on the public transportation train, and I saw Zach almost completely shut down.
I have another podcast that's a health anxiety podcast. You can tune into that one.
I
Yeah.
have pictures of that. I'm not. It was Zach holding on to. He wasn't even holding. He was
Terror.
he was like
he was
this.
blocking
Oh,
two
it's-
seats.
And there was like a bunch of people, and he was like, "You weren't even touching anything."
It's hard.
You were
Yeah.
His
like,
hands are
It's-
inside his coat jacket
It's-
sleeves.
legitimately were. I was like, it wasn't too bad, was it? And you're like, never again.
Never
We're like,
again.
But
It's
Uber,
hard.
in his defense,
Uber.
you were very much like I had a nice chair to myself, and Zach was like in the corner, like, around all these people.
It just happened to be rush hour in Chicago on the Orange Line, and 50 people fit into a space for 20 right around Zach.
You know
And,
what?
brotherly
And
love.
Guess what? I did fine.
You
and
did.
In
You
the
didn't
end of
freak
it,
out.
I never got sick. I'm still alive. Here we go.
Yeah, I appreciate somebody who can be panicking in a situation and not make a scene. Not that you're welcome to make a scene if you're panicking.
A
All
panic
So you
on the
make
inside.
scenes when I
but-
make a wrong turn.
Oh.
Yeah, we were we're on the way to the airport, and it's like I have a flight time, and Riley takes like 3 wrong turns, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know, we'll get there." And I'm like, "Riley, it's very easy to follow a
Just-
He has the GP. That was what killed me. He had the GPS up, and he was making wrong turns. And we
The
were just like,
interstate
"Buddy, what
goes
are we
like
doing?"
straight into it.
How
do
do
you
I-
Nah, it was St. Pete, not Tampa.
Yeah, but it's still
I
2
just-
turns.
I didn't want to say this then. I just wanted to spend more time with you.
Yeah, that's not even true.
Maybe I
but-
wanted you to miss your flight.
Ooh.
Love wills the good of the other. How do you will the good of the
Jeez.
other when we're taking wrong turns? Right?
Honestly, that's where we were having great convos. So it's like to continue just to dive into it and
Yeah,
not
yeah.
be like, Riley. But I had to tell him, I go, Riley, I'm going to be honest. I'm freaking out a little bit right now. We got to get to the airport. And then I got there and sat there for 2 hours before my
See,
flight.
I was just trying to help you out, man.
Here's what I love
Roll your
about
eyes
this
good.
is when we think about season 2, right? This is episode 13, end of season 1. When we think about, well, where's this all going? And I think it's rides to the airport. It's wrong turns. It's corporate America. It's in an 8-person household. Our hope is that this wayfaring journey is this continual, over the long course of our life, development of God is love. We're made in his image, made to look just like that. And the invitation is follow me and let's go into wrong turns and 8-person households and corporate America and feel what it feels to have to wrestle through that embodiment that moves me from 2 days ago when I heard you say what you said or take that wrong turn or challenge me or compete with me. There was something in me that wanted to get ahead of you or wanted to punch you or whatever. But today I have conviction that I want to love you and I want to do it really well. And that happens over time. That's what I'm excited for season 2 is more conversations about what's it like to ride in a car and wrestle through that real thing that happens to us in the maturing process of love. If we can have an honest conversation about that, that's pretty cool because it's not to be theory, not to be abstraction, not to be just, words that fly over our head that we don't understand. There's an invitation to an actual reality that does become true and embodied and points beyond itself. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I think that's what's been fun about this season 1 is like it's kind of been a little bit of both of, the texture of this walk and the journey and a little bit of the ideals of like the idea of this way of thinking that, probably new to a lot of people and like the different words. So it's going to be a lot of fun to even dive in even more and talk about. I mean, I'm just glad that we're even having a season 2. I'm glad we're going to get the call back. Glad the big bosses liked what we were putting out there.
Hey, it's good. It's all of
America.
There you go.
Guys, this has been a fun season. A lot of ground that we've gotten to cover. I hope, as we're trying to walk away and kind of close this out, I mean, I think it's been fun, especially the audience I'm sure we've gathered. It's been fun to get to hang out with you guys and get to talk about this, especially I think when we think back to our cheers, never alone, walk on. Like I think that's so much of what, this journey is remembering that, you're not alone, that we're all walking in this together, that it's a whole process, that none of us, it would be really fun to like be sitting here and being like, well, we figured it out. It's all good. This is the answer and like moving on. But like, that's what kind of stinks about the journey in a way, that it is a process. And I think it took me a while. It might be different for you guys to like accept that journey, that it's like, and it's like in all aspects of my life, even in comedy, like I want to be a super funny comedian today. And today I'm just like an okay comedian and like accepting that. And then just like taking the steps in that, like it's funny how like that is in so many aspects of our lives, that it's like, it's a process in the journey. And like, that's part of what we're going to be touching on season 2.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, we're all talking about how we participate now and like Zach being a little bit ahead of us in that journey. Not too much, but a little bit.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
Close to you.
How do you actively like participate in the sense of like reminding yourself? Is there a place you retreat to, like something that brings you back to where you are continuously? Because it's like, do you have to be active, or once you get it, you get it? Like,
That's such a great question. It really is a great question. I think that what's been cool is letting go of that idea that I have to have it all figured out. right now it was an invitation to find a different path where the vision is Jesus. And I'm going to spend my life looking to him. And then as I do that and I'm near him and I'm curious about what it's like to embody that life in the world, when that's really my curiosity, that path becomes a path that I don't want to depart from, right? And that's different than I have it all figured out, so it's solved. That's not what I've experienced, but I have experienced that I don't have that desire to go back into the cave. You always pass by it, and we have that even on that picture, that it's always there. There's always that, hey, come back to this other way of being. But what I have found over time is when the vision stays like, hey, I don't have to have it all figured out, but I'm with one who is leading me, who does. And so I just have to keep my vision on Jesus and look to him. And the more I do that, I begin to look like him. And then that's what draws me out into the world. And that source is from within me. And the invitation and the life in me wants to embody that, wants to move into that. Once I made that shift, that's what's been the most helpful thing. So how do I nurture that? How do I show up like that, or continue to try to show up like that? It's to go back to vision up, right? That daily confession that says, you are God, I am not. I don't want to be at the center of the story. I want to be nested within this story where God is love, and I am made in the image of that being. That's the meaningful story that I'm in. And if that's the meaningful story, that's embodied in this particularized version of a human, that never again on the planet, there will never be an expression of God's love that looks and feels and sounds like this. There's only one Katya. So God, it's like the Ephesians talks about us as the poetry of God. Again, once I get that and I go, okay, I'm looking to this God who writes poems called Katya, and writes poems called Jared, and writes poems called Jonathan and Riley, and all of you who are listening, like, once we understand, like, there's a tone of God's love that you bring into the world that without your embodied expression of that love, it's not there. That's incredible. So keep your vision up. I look up, you are God, I am not. That's the story. That catapults me into this posture of surrender that says, may it be. Like, let's go. If that's who I was made to be, then I want to be the most Katya that I can be. I want to be the most Jared. I want to be the most Zach, the most mature, loving version of Zach that's possible at 47 years old on a Friday morning when I wake up tomorrow. I want my wife, my kids, my coworkers, my neighbors, I want them to come as close as they can to that. If that's what I was made to be, that's what I want to become today. So it goes from up to in that desire. And then it's open your front door and walk out and go, okay, I'm going to see my story as an opportunity for me to embody the love of God in the world. And I don't get it right, and I mess up, and I fall short, and it turns in on itself, and I end the day going, of course, right? And tomorrow I get to go again, right? It's the grace at every start. So I don't know if that even answered your question, but I don't think that I waffle from like one path to the other. I think it's that I stumble along the path, but I'm here, and this is the story. And now I trip all the time, fall all the time, make it look ugly. But this is the road I'm walking, and that's pretty fun.
That's good. Yeah. It's not like as exaggerated in the sense that like we're so early in the journey that like at any moment we could just like, go relive our old life, not old life, but old habits.
Yes.
Whereas now you have established who you are, where you are, what your purpose is. And it's almost like you wave at the cave and like almost feel like this like sweetness in the sense of the transformation that in that cave you came out of, and like the wisdom that you gained from it.
I love it. I want a shirt that says "Wave at the Cave."
Wave at the cave.
Wave at the cave. Get that tattooed.
It's tattooed.
So good.
It's almost
a wayfarer walking by the cave.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's almost more painful in those seasons where because you can't go back into this cave and be who you were previously.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's almost even more painful when you're back in the cave because you feel it, because you know what it's like to be on the outside of the cave.
Yeah.
And I think in the seasons where I've wandered back in, it's been like even just the biggest nightmare, and just like low season, because you're like, I know it was more out there. It's like you try to deny. It's like there's nowhere outside of the cave. Like you don't. There's nothing out there. Like I just went out there and there's nothing. But it's like you still feel that calling and that unsettledness, drawing you back out, which is like unreal.
Can I just say too, I'm so glad you said that, because that's so real. Right in the early adventure of walking in this way, you pass by the cave and there is a little bit more allure. We don't have that habit and practice built, so you enter back in, and I think that shame can swallow us up in that, because we're like, because I think you go back in, and I've done that, you go back in and you experience life in the cave, and you've tasted something other. And so then you come back to the old, like a dog returns to vomit is a proverb. You go back to that old thing and you're just like, oh, I know better. And so the inner struggle isn't there, because this is not what you're made for. I think the more prominent struggle becomes, then I'm ashamed. And so what do I do? How do I get out of that? So I just would love to hear your stories if you felt that or experienced that, and then maybe talk for a second before we get out of here about how you get out of that, because I think a lot of wonderful people, maybe even who have been listening to season 1, say, okay, yes, I'm with you, up out of the cave and something beyond. I want that. And I start to nurture that life and it leads me out. But then I end up going right back. And then it's almost harder, because now I'm ashamed that I went back in. Have you guys felt that, or you felt that at all, where you felt like imprisoned, not because you want to be there, but because you went back? And so now you're like, oh.
Yeah, I especially, I was just thinking of like the dog going back to vomit. What was that for me? I think like drinking, like when I was sad, was like a big thing, especially like struggled with like early on in adulthood. And it was interesting how like through the years, like that kind of got phased out, where it's like I couldn't go back to that as like a thing, and you kind of grew out of that in a way, and still get Five Guys delivered every once in a while. So it's a work in progress. But yeah, that was one of those things that it's like, it feels like even when I'd go in the deep, like feel very sorrowful, it's like could never go back to just like drinking it away and numbing all the pain, which is like funny, because that was a very prominent thing for me for, years, where it was just the thing. And it's like when I was sad, it's like, well, let's get a drink. And it's like funny how that's not really the case anymore, which is like very unique. And, as far as like coming out of that season, I've thought about that many times in season 1. What's that looked like, of like trying to get out of the cave and like take steps. And for me, I think I always wanted, similar to like it being a process, is I wanted to be running. Like I wanted it to be a very smooth thing where I got up and I was just like starting to jog. And I think, that's a bad way of thinking. You want to get up and you're like, well, I want to be clean as soon as I stand up, as far as like the process of like, I want to just not struggle at all and it just be really smooth. And I think for me, it took, getting out of not moving. Like I was just stationary for a long time and expecting things to change around me, and starting to take steps to, anything, to crawl, like to just move in a direction and move out of the cave, is what it took for me, personally. And I think that was like a really hard journey, because I think for a while, I was in one spot and wanting everything to change and wanting God to break the cave and get me into the sunshine. I didn't want to have to move out of the shade. And it just took a lot. And so I think movement, I think everybody would say like being stationary for years isn't good. And so like any kind of movement, any kind of steps, even a Christian, a non-Christian view would be like, yeah, you don't want to stay stationary. You want to move. And so for me, it took a little bit of movement and taking steps, even when I was like, I don't even know, is God good? Like, I don't even know if I really believe that. And it's like still just taking steps or crawling as much as you can. And that's painful.
I think that's so. There's a story where Jesus encounters somebody who's been paralyzed for a long time, and he says, like, pick up your mat and walk. And if you could imagine being in that moment, it's like, Well, Jesus didn't recalibrate the entire rest of the universe to meet his experience of not walking. He invited him and empowered him to walk and said, "Do you want to be well? Like, get up and walk, right? Like, I will be with you. You're not going to have to do it all on your own, but I am calling you to walk out of that." And I think that's very wise of you to say, like, you can sit in the cave and have an intellectual change or even a heart change, and there's something that is reality about embodying it. And so there's that desire to hear and obey and like get up and walk, pick up your mat and walk, and there's a continual invitation. But again, this loops back to the shame part that goes, well, what happens when I don't do that? Because I know I can, and I know I should, and I didn't. Have you ever felt that, where it's like there's where you almost feel imprisoned because of your past attempts and they haven't been successful, or you feel like you haven't been able to get up and walk, and so now you're like, nah, I better just stay.
That's something I've struggled with a lot and still do sometimes, specifically with sexual sin and that history, just because it's like a sin against yourself, but even worse, like my wife someday, like I dishonored that, and to like dishonor sex and the way God designed it. Like this is the most beautiful thing. Like a life is entering into the world. Like it's like the womb is like a portal to the transcendent where a soul will come into being. Like that's, and I just threw it out. And so that's something that I still struggle with, the shame, but it's also, I think I've sort of taken it and tried to get good out of it. And a lot of it is just humbling myself before God and saying like, this is who I am. I'm a disgusting, broken human being. Like I'm nothing, yet you still saved me. And it keeps me humble knowing, who I am. But it's just also accepting that like he did still save me. Like he didn't draw the line there, and he still said, like, you are my son. So it's really just believing that.
There's a great scripture that says the people who have been forgiven much love much. There's that, and it's like, you know it when you meet somebody who knows that their life has been extended in incredible grace and mercy. And I think that's what's cool, is there's a friend of mine who talks about writing and says, don't bury the lead. And I think that's what's such a great way to think about it. Like, don't bury the lead. Our brokenness is for sure a part of that story, 100%. But don't bury the lead. The lead is there's this extraordinary love that meets you in that place and goes, yeah, I know how deep and how hard and how broken that brokenness is, and I'm here. And the lead of the story is the incredible grace of God that's just like, how can that be? Those who are forgiven much love much, right? But I think I'm proud of you for even just saying that too, because that evidence of conscience, right? Like, I feel a brokenness about this one. I feel brokenhearted about that. That's evidence that your conscience is not seared. Our consciences repeatedly, going against conviction. Over time, you will sear your conscience, and that's a harder thing to deal with. But when you're saying like, oh, something happened, I went right back to it, and I'm brokenhearted, because I see how broken it is. That's actually a sign of health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's true for anybody listening too. If you feel that like, oh, the way I treated someone, the thing I engaged in, I'm brokenhearted about it. Yeah, pay attention to that, but also don't beat yourself up too much that you feel that conviction. Almost be thankful that you do. Like, that's evidence that your conscience is alive and awake.
Completely. I mean, I could relate to that in like a scale of like when you want to move forward, but you just feel that heaviness of like, but I've done something so wrong to someone or to myself. It's like, it's almost like you feel like unworthy of anyone's love or any like God, you know, like of his love. So like, thank you for saying that. I mean, in any circumstance, whether it's like a relationship thing or, I mean, I guess it's only a relationship thing now I think about it. But I just liked what you guys said. That's all I wanted to say with that. But in my own experience, regarding the cave, I feel like for me was more of when I look at the cave, I felt like comfortable and safe and like I would at least be taken care of. And whereas the outside of the cave was a little bit more unpredictable, kind of what Riley was saying, where it's like you just don't know what that future holds. And so for me, walking back into the cave was that sense of security and thinking, well, this is going to fulfill me enough that I will at least know that I'm being taken care of and that I'm being watched after and all these things. But there was always something like deep down in my gut that was like, but there's so much more. Like, why are you settling so early in your life? And that was like, to be so frank, that's literally what I would think to myself. But then I read something that was like, unless you're profoundly moved by something, don't settle for it. Like, whether it's a job or a relationship or a friendship or whatever it might be, it's like, unless you're profoundly moved by it, it's like, don't sit on it. And I think that just hearing that really changed my perspective on it. But it's like you find yourself looking back and being like, well, at least I'll be comfortable, because it's like there's other things that don't promise that, but it's going to be exciting, but it's just not going to be comfortable. So that was my experience. That still comes up from time to time. I won't even lie.
I think it's in the universal human experience. I mean, you're literally quoting Exodus, like a promised land, right? And so out of this, you're called to enter this. And in between, you're here, and the natural instinct is to turn back and go, well, at least we had leeks and onions. At least we had something, right? And so that instinct is to go back to Egypt. I know this, and I sustained myself there. I know what that was. And there's this promised land. There's this future land that's going to be I don't see it. All I see is wilderness. And even the people like, what did you bring us out here to die? Right? Like, ugh. Tampa? You weren't thinking it. I know.
It's so funny though that we'll see the Israelites in that, and we'll be like, "They're
These
so
fools."
dumb." Yeah, and it's like, I am Israelites.
Yeah.
You know, it's
We who wrestle.
I am dumb. You know, I want the leeks and onions so often.
Yeah.
So often.
Remember that Lewis quote that says, like, friendship is born anytime two people say, "Oh, you too." And this idea that we're friends of God and that he's called us his friends. And there's some beautiful thing there that I think just happened where you were saying, like, thanks for saying that, right? That I've felt unworthy because of past mistakes. Then I've thought, well, that disqualifies me, or it somehow rewrites my story as now a different story, right? I can't ever be included in this story because there's these things that now I'm categorically in this story. And I think that beautiful thing about having a big theology of sin, like a sufficient theology of the brokenness of our world, Jesus comes up and meets us on the road and goes, "Oh, you too," right? Like, the consequence of sin is death. And the whole Christian story is that God came all the way into that so that he could be like, "Oh, you too. You're not alone in that." And I think for everybody who's listening, hear that clearly. Don't bury the lead, because the thing is, look up and be like, "Oh, you too?" Deep brokenness that seems disqualifying and like it erases you from the story that you really hoped for. You turn to the left or the right, to any direction, and you're going to find another human who, if we're honest, says, "Oh, you too?" Yeah, I've had the same thought. I've had the same experience. And this is where, like, a hope and a future, a promised land, there's no way, because the story's been devastated too much. And that's where the incarnation comes alive and we see the gospel come alive. So good.
Completely.
Man, what a journey we've gone on in season 1. I'm excited for season 2. It should be a fun time diving in.
Should
Who
be a
knows what we'll
hoot.
talk about?
No.
We're going to find out. We're going to spend all summer getting that one ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel free to comment some topics if you have something you want us to tackle. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Love it.
Good stuff. Well, nobody has anything else to say.
Adios.
Let's
Let's do a little toast.
There it is, the toast.
Never alone.
Walk
on.
on.
Until next time, guys.
There you go.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.